Welcome back to Tethered and Whole. My name is Matt, and I'm your host here today. When I talk with educators about healthy school culture, I don't start with initiatives or handbooks or professional development days. I start with Mrs. Heinz. She was my second grade teacher and the best second grade teacher ever. My family had just moved from Washington to Montana, and everything in my life felt unfamiliar. But I don't remember feeling nervous about school, and that's largely because of Mrs. Heinz. Our classroom sat next to the library and just a few doors down from my sister's first grade class. Mrs. Heinz, she used to give us frosted donuts at the top of our papers for excellent penmanship. It was like a little -0 with a little squiggly line in the zero for the frosting. And at the end of the year, we all went to her house for a picnic. I felt seen that year. I felt like I belonged. And for a kid who had just been uprooted in his life, that mattered more than any academic standard ever could. Mrs. Heinz also didn't tolerate gossip, and she didn't handle it with lectures or shame. Instead, she taught us a little calypso clap and rhyme that went like this. So here, get your two fingers of one hand, making a beat on the palm of the opposite hand. Gossip, gossip, evil thing, much unhappiness it brings. If you can't say something nice, don't talk at all, is my advice. We laughed, we clapped, and somehow, without realizing it, we learned something foundational about community. That lesson has stayed with me for decades because gossip and its more socially acceptable cousins still quietly shape the culture of schools today. The truth is, toxicity in schools rarely arrives with flashing warning lights. It doesn't usually come in through the front door wearing a name tag that says, "Hey, I'm here to ruin your morale." Instead, it seeps in quietly through sarcasm passed off as humor, through eye rolls in meetings, through stories told in the lounge that would never be said out loud in the room where actual decisions are made. You know, toxicity is like mold. It thrives in the hidden corners where no one's paying attention. And by the time it's visible, the damage is already underway. At its core, toxicity is any action or mindset that erodes trust and corrodes authentic connection. It leaves behind cynicism, exhaustion, and fractured teams. And often, it doesn't start with malice. It starts with unmet needs, chronic stress, and environments where people don't feel safe enough to be honest. When authentic relationships require time and effort, but that effort isn't supported, people compensate in unhealthy ways. One of the ways this shows up is through toxic masculinity. In schools, this doesn't just affect boys. It shapes adult behavior too. It's the unspoken rule that says you should handle everything yourself, that asking for help is weakness, that emotions should be managed privately, and productivity should be visible. It's the male teacher who won't ask for instructional support because he doesn't want to look incompetent. It's the student who wants to journal or talk about sadness and then gets teased for not being tough enough. It's a staff culture that quietly rewards competition over collaboration. The cost, folks, the cost is high because vulnerability, that's the doorway to growth. And when vulnerability is shamed, learning stalls. Another common form of toxicity in schools is toxic positivity. This is the overemphasis on cheerfulness at the expense of honesty. It shows up when struggle is met with platitudes instead of support. Just stay positive. It'll all work out. Focus on the bright side. On the surface, it sounds encouraging, but underneath, it communicates that certain emotions are inconvenient, that pain needs to be edited before it's allowed into the room. Positivity that silences pain isn't kindness. It's neglect. And over time, those unacknowledged emotions don't disappear. They compound. They leak into relationships, decisions, and burnout. Closely related to this are two dynamics that often hide in plain sight: cordial hypocrisy and common enemy intimacy. Cordial hypocrisy is when everyone is polite on the surface, but trust is thin underneath. This is when people nod in meetings and vent in the hallways. When nothing is addressed directly, so nothing actually changes. It's when you walk into a school and the secretaries are smiling, but there's this weird dynamic. It's when everything is shiny and perfect on the outside, but when you peel back the layers, there's no real relationships among anyone because trust hasn't been made a priority, so it isn't there. Now, common enemy intimacy is when connection forms, but it forms around shared dislike. It's complaining about the administration, complaining about a colleague, or those parents. It all creates a fast sense of belonging. Oh yeah, we're a team, us against them. But it's counterfeit. It burns hot and it fades fast, leaving the ashes of bitterness behind. Those moments can feel bonding in the light of day, but in the quiet later on, they feel brittle and hollow. Then there are the doldrums. This is the slowest and perhaps the most dangerous form of toxicity because it looks like nothing is wrong. Deadlines are met, standards are covered, smiles are exchanged, but beneath the surface, energy drains away. Innovation stalls. Risk-taking feels pointless. A teacher tries something new, sparks a little excitement, and then watches it fizzle when no one else joins in. Like driftwood half sunk in water. The school keeps moving, but really without the usual buoyancy or direction. It's not a lack of care. It's actually cultural erosion. And finally, there's toxic productivity, the belief that working constantly is the same thing as being effective. In education, this shows up as martyr culture. Exhaustion becomes a badge of honor. Teachers measure their worth by how many committees they serve on or how late their nights are at night. Work becomes a way to avoid rest, relationships, or harder conversations about sustainability. And slowly, the very people who care the most begin to disappear, emotionally at first, and then sometimes even physically. Guys, here's the thing I want to be clear about. None of this makes someone a bad educator. These patterns are signals. They're signs of systems under strain and people doing the best that they can inside those strained systems. This is why the most powerful first step isn't fixing, it's naming. Naming what we notice. When someone calmly says, I'm noticing that this joke might land in a way we don't intend, or maybe I'm noticing we're avoiding the real issue here. When those things are said out loud, the culture shifts. Naming moves us from silent complacency to gentle accountability. And this is where the heart of Tethered and Whole really lives. Healthy school cultures are built when people are tethered to shared values instead of appearances, anchored to trust, empathy, and honesty, even when conversations feel uncomfortable. And schools thrive when people are allowed to be whole, when the full range of human experience is welcome, not just the polished parts. Joy and frustration, confidence and doubt, strength and vulnerability. All of it belongs. Mrs. Heinz didn't just teach me penmanship or kindness. She created a space where belonging was the default and harm was named early, gently, and clearly. That's what healthy cultures do. They don't pretend everything is fine. They don't bond through bitterness or burn themselves out in the name of productivity. They stay tethered to what matters, and they make room for people to show up whole. And when educators choose that day after day, they don't just protect themselves from toxicity. They create schools where trust can grow, purpose can return, and people can finally breathe again. That's it for this week. Thanks for joining me on Tethered and Whole, and I'll see you next time.